Are you fed up with minions? Do you get tired of people saying, "Is that a bone spear in your pants?" Or "Are you just happy to see me?" No, just me? Maybe you like blood. You know, the fun kind. I mean, the warm kind. I mean, the video game kind. I mean, the kind that oozes and squirts. Listen, this isn't getting any better, so let's just surge out with it. But my rehearsed dad jokes aside, from when eventually I will coerce, I mean convince a woman to bear my offsprings, I personally got tired of playing a pet-focused necromancer, and since sorcerer isn't explosive enough for me in a bloody way that satisfies my Transylvanian gamer genes, I decided to give Blood Surge a try. A hard try. A really dedicated try despite every other skill pointing me in the other direction. And I managed to get my World Tier 2 capstone at around level 44. So I decided to make a video about it, because if I could play one of the most underwhelming yet visually satisfying Necromancer builds, you might want to give it a try as well. So here we go. The main skills you will be going towards as you level up, although you can change or mix and match these until you get the later skills into the game, we'll see you use Hemorrhage as your generator, Blood Surge as your main source of damage, Corpse Explosion as your second main source of damage, Blood Mist as your defensive / unstoppable / generate some corpses sometimes ability, and Corpse Tendrils to actually group minions up, crowd control them, and apply vulnerable, and last, Iron Golem to also do the same thing by slapping the ground really hard. And although the purpose of this is to play without minions, you can still play without the Iron Golem, but I found the extra application of vulnerable, regardless of how much damage the Golem is doing, how much damage the Golem is taking, how present it is in the battlefield, is almost negligible because the vulnerable is just way too good. So as you level up, although take into consideration that this is very interchangeable and depends on basically what you want to do and how you want to put the points in, this is just, you know, a general guideline of how to get your skills. You want to start with Hemorrhage, Enhance Hemorrhage, and then go into Blood Surge, Enhance Blood Surge, Paranormal Blood Surge, and finish up with Acolyte's Hemorrhage. The reason you're getting all of these is because Hemorrhage has a pretty high increased attack speed, giving you a lot of essence really quick. Also, it's a blood skill, and obviously Blood Surge is the crux of this build, and you want to make sure that you benefit from the overpowered damage, which is where Blood Surge will get most of its damage, not from the general tooltip, but from the enhanced overpowered damage, similar to a Werebear Pulverized Druid. Now, there are builds that take away Hemorrhage eventually and replace it with Reap to generate corpses, but that wouldn't be akin to the blood theme of the build. But hey, you are welcome to try that out. After all of this, you will want to get Corpse Explosion with Enhanced Corpse Explosion and Plagued Corpse Explosion to increase the amount of damage that you will be doing with, to, and from corpses, especially when they are crowd controlled. Blood Mist is next on the list to give you that escape from any type of crowd control, because you don't really have any mobility or any defensives, and since you will be foregoing the use of pets, a lot of pets, you will take a lot more damage than a normal Necromancer build. So Blood Mist with Enhanced Blood Mist and Ghastly Mist will be the ideal way to go, plus you'll be generating some corpses here and there, which is very good whenever you're finding yourself not able to kill that first or second minion to generate those initial corpses in a big fight. Grim Harvest, by putting 1 point in, will unlock Fueled by Death, which you will max really quick, and then you move on to Corpse Tendrils, then you get Enhanced Corpse Tendrils and Plagued Corpse Tendrils. Pretty much the previous Necromancer build that we had on our channel advised you using this because the vulnerable is just way too good, and yes, that is through the Plagued Corpse Explosion, even though it still brings you the AoE stun and grouping up of the enemies, which is really good for this particular build, considering you're exploding things around you in an AoE fashion. This is very quintessential to your playstyle. After this, you will want to max Blood Surge for the immediate most amount of damage that you can get, and start putting points into your blood passives. The way I recommend you do it is put 1 point into Gruesome Mending, not really that relevant, and max out Coalesce Blood and Tides of Blood. You can also put 1 point into Drain Vitality. And after this, you will max Grim Harvest and then you'll finally be able to unlock Rathma's Vigor. Max out Corpse Explosion next, or you can do it sooner if you feel like you need the damage, and then start putting 1 point into Unliving Energy and max out Imperfectly Balanced for more Blood Surge damage. After this, you'll start maxing out a lot of other things. Death's Embrace and Death's Reach will give you all of the damage to both close and distant enemies, since without a lot of pets, you will be both close and in the distance away from your enemies at the same time. Plus, your Blood Surge and Corpse Explosion can have a pretty big range, so hitting those distant enemies is still pretty good, considering that you'll be whacked in the face by a lot of minions at the same time. You can start off by putting 1 point into Standalone for some damage reduction, considering you're not going to use a lot of pets, and you will max out Memento Mori, especially if by this time you have decided to fully sacrifice your skeletons and skeleton mages, which you should, because that's the point of the build. After this, max out Golem Mastery, because we are assuming you're going to be using your Golem, and optional, you'll have a couple of points left you can put into either Hewed Flesh or Standalone, or a combination of both if that works better for you. And speaking of your actual pets, in terms of the Book of the Dead changes, you'll probably want to keep your skeletons a little bit early on. They give you some meat shield, some tankiness, if you don't particularly mind them being up. They're not a crux to you dealing damage, and you can even get some Reaper skeletons that can generate corpses, but I would recommend you sacrifice them once you get your Golem, because by that point you'll probably won't have enough room on your bar for the skeletons as well. And if you do sacrifice your skeletons, which you should sacrifice your skirmishers for the extra critical chance, and sacrifice your cold mages for the vulnerable synergy. You will keep your Iron Golem with the slam that makes enemies vulnerable, as we mentioned before, but if you just really want to sacrifice it and maybe get something else, maybe like an ultimate ability, you can sacrifice the Iron Golem still, and also even get rid of Golem Mastery, enabling those 3 points to be put into something else. Personally, I found that leveling from 40 to 50, the extra vulnerable window from Iron Golem fits really well into my rotation in between the Corpse Tendrils cooldown, and it will give you more consistent damage across the board, especially in AoE, plus it takes some hits off of your back. Although this could be a plus or a minus, you kind of really want an aspect at the moment. Blood Surge doesn't really do that much damage on its own, and without the aspect, it's just a gratified blood skill that just fits a particular niche or kink that you might have, and doesn't really do a lot in terms of you leveling up in a decent manner. A blood-focused Necromancer isn't even remotely close to being the fastest way to level, but if you do get the Blood Bathe aspect, which makes your Blood Surge echo part of its damage, then you'll have some decent amount of damage, surprisingly so, when it comes to blasting down packs. And another aspect that you might look into getting, especially once you unlock Corpse Tendrils, is the aspect of Grasping Vines that gives you crit chance and crit damage once you have your Corpse Tendrils up and gripping things all around. There are of course a lot of other aspects that you can get defensively when it comes to anything that increases your attack speed, or skill damage, armor, or simply interact with any of the skills that you use, such as Blood Mist detonates corpses in Corpse Explosion, which I was pretty lucky to get, not necessary, but it does actually help out. And a little hint about using these aspects: if you can afford the resources, you can put them on the weapons at least early on to get the extra value from it and have a little bit more extra damage. It is a little bit more expensive. However, I feel like this build does lack a little bit in terms of its damage output, so I figured that using a lot more resources, at least until they start asking for the legendary materials, was way worth in terms of the overall damage that I was doing. But you can still put them on rings and amulets, or parts of gears that you will probably carry out for your entire leveling process and don't have to replace them. In terms of the actual playstyle and how you want to use this build in combat, you first want to make sure that you have enough essence, obviously spamming your generator, which is probably going to be Hemorrhage. After that, you want to get your Golem and slam the ground to put the vulnerable up, and then you will start spamming Blood Surge and eventually generate corpses. From the first corpse, you will use Corpse Tendrils to group things up if they're still alive, and apply a second set of Vulnerable, and then start doing damage with Corpse Explosion and even more Blood Surge. Especially if you have the Echo aspect, Blood Surge will probably do a little bit more damage than Corpse Explosion. During this time, you will probably want to fill in with Hemorrhage, especially as you pick up Blood Orbs so that they can do AoE damage. And you will use Blood Mist to get out of crowd control, survive, or even generate those corpses that you need, and then you rinse and repeat. The build is pretty straightforward since you're not relying on big ultimates or big cooldowns. you'll be able to rotate these abilities back to back and have a surprisingly amount of sustain from all the blood orbs that you generate, and even go heavier into Fortify if you feel like you need a lot more defensives. I've tested a lot of abilities trying to make this build work as I leveled with curses and different style of pets, different style of sacrifices. I feel like this is probably the best way to do it, but since as you're going to be leveling up, you won't have access to all of these skills, you have extra points to put in here and there and see what else works for you. I have used Blood Wave a bunch of times, especially with 1 or 2 aspects that I was just lucky enough to get. It was okay, but for its cooldown, unless you have like turbo synergies with it, it didn't really feel like it did a lot of damage. It was just a cool thing to do every now and again. And hey, I had the space on my bars to put an extra ability there since I wasn't really focused on keeping up pets. Probably using some pets is a little bit better since you are getting some meat shields up there. However, their bonuses in terms of sacrifices, especially once you get Memento Mori, start to actually pile up, and the later you go into your leveling process, the more those stats scale better with you, so you'll probably want to eventually sacrifice your minions. Hope this build was helpful and you enjoyed the content. Leave a like and a subscribe, it really helps us out, and we will see you in the next one. Bye bye.